You know what's a good cure for the football blues, for the bad football blues? You know what always is good when bad football is ailing you? Hoops. Let's talk a little Pitt basketball here on the Morning Pit. We'll change it up just for a little bit with the exhibition game coming next week, next Wednesday. We'll mix it up, talk a little hoops on today's Morning Pit here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, it's Thursday. We're almost to the end of the week here on the Morning Pit on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's always fun moving through the week, getting closer to game day. It's always fun just kind of moving through the week in general. I think no matter what your circumstances are or what you're looking forward to in the weekend, it's always good to get there. And when we get to Thursday, we're getting pretty close. You know the deal here. Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you never miss any of our exclusive Pitt video content. Daily morning Pitt videos like this one right here. Our weekly live show like the one we did last night at 8:30 p.m. Me and Jim Hammett get together for an hour to talk Pitt sports with you. Bringing in your comments and questions to join the discussion. It's always fun to do those. And then, of course, our live post-game show that we do, the live stream after every Pitt game. We'll have that on Saturday after the Notre Dame game. Pretty much as soon as that game ends, just a few minutes later, we will be live talking about the game. Those are always lively and exciting. Whether it's a win or a loss, you know, the one after Louisville was a lot of fun. We had a lot of good conversation there. And then the one this past weekend was, we can't say it's fun. it's coming after a loss like that game, but ultimately it's still good to get together and just talk about Pitt sports for a little bit after the game. And you do it right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And you might be saying, oh, I'm going to forget. I'm not going to remember that you have a post-game show, or I don't know what time you start, or what this or that. I don't know anything. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications, and then you'll get an alert sent right to your phone. So you will never miss anything. You won't miss a Morning Pit video or a live stream or anything else that we do right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So like this video and subscribe, and that way you won't miss out. Of course, the website right there, Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, a little bit of Pitt sports coverage there. Actually, all the Pitt sports coverage there. Football, basketball, recruiting, you find it all at Panther-Lair.com, and message boards to interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans. All day, every day at Panther-Lair.com. So Pitt fans talking a lot on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. Obviously, the football message boards are getting most of the traffic right now, and understandably so. Everybody's got something to say about Pitt football. But Pitt basketball, there's some conversation going on there as well. There's conversation going on the message boards, the center court at the Pete message board, which is our premium Pitt basketball message board. And a lot of conversation is centered around the secret scrimmage that Pitt had last Saturday. Not really all that secret. A lot of details came out as the Panthers took on Georgetown, playing at sort of a hidden location, not on Pitt's campus or Georgetown's campus, a little bit of a midway spot. But, most teams, probably all teams, do this kind of thing every year. They have these scrimmages. It's an opportunity to play against another team, see how you stack up, and maybe even give you a better sense of competition, a better sense of where you are than the exhibition game. Pitt's going to play... Who do they play next Wednesday night? UPJ or somebody like that in an exhibition game. And you might get a better sense of where you're at playing against another high major team. And usually pick somebody who's out of conference, somebody who's not on the schedule, somebody that you're not worried about, losing some competitive advantage because you have to face them later in the year. It's just a chance to get on the court against some guys wearing different colored jerseys and find out a little bit about where you are. Just like the trip to Spain was about finding, gave them a chance to find out a little bit about where they were. Just like the exhibition game next Wednesday night is going to give them a chance to find out a little bit about where they were. That's what this scrimmage against Georgetown enabled Pitt to do. Get in a real game situation, play the game, have it called, and see what happens. See who plays, see who can, how the lineup comes together. And particularly, I think these kind of things would always be valuable heading into a season because you always have new faces, you always have turnover. But these days where you're inevitably going to be relying on a significant number of new faces every year, whether they're transfers or freshmen, it's huge, I think, to have this kind of opportunity. And of course, I offer the caveat right now that if Pitt had gotten waxed against Georgetown, if they had had a really bad game, I'd be talking about it's no big deal. It's just a scrimmage. It's just a chance to find out where you are. Who knows if they were even calling plays or doing anything to try to win. It might have been more about, just experimenting with things. But that didn't happen. Pitt actually won. They won by 14. They won 78-64, according to numerous reports and our own sourced reporting, I guess, if you want to call it that. They won by 14 points. And that's a pretty good outcome against a high major non-conference opponent. Georgetown was playing without one of its key guys. They lost another key guy to an injury that sounds like it's going to keep him out for, I think, the whole season. But you're playing a high major opponent in a non-conference game, a non-conference high major opponent, even in a scrimmage setting, an exhibition setting. If you win by 14, there's something to be encouraged about there. And there's also something to be encouraged about with some of the individual performances. And there are a couple that we'll highlight here. And you've seen these stats by now. We're not giving away anything new. I'm going to say some of these things. You're going to be like, yeah, we know. We've been reading about it since you posted on Saturday afternoon. Like, why are you making a big deal about it now? Well, I'm making a big deal about it now because we spent the last 3 days talking about football. And hoops is coming up quick. So it seems like a good time to talk about Pitt basketball. Ishmael Leggett, the transfer from Rhode Island, was the star of this game for Pitt, this scrimmage against Georgetown. He scored 20 points, shot 7 of 10 from the field, and had 5 rebounds and 5 assists. And I'll start right there because I think it's huge for Pitt to get something out of Ishmael Leggett. I think Ishmael Leggett is there are a lot of key guys on this team, and he's not number one, and you could make a case for 2 or 3 other guys being more important, but Ishmael Leggett has a chance, I think, to be a really key contributor on this team. I think the idea with Leggett, who last year at Rhode Island, he averaged, 16 points, 5.8 rebounds, 1.5 steals, 2.5 assists, also 2.5 turnovers, so basically a 1-to-1 turnover to assist to turnover ratio. I think the feeling and the hope with Leggett, and Jeff Capel has said this, and other people we've talked to around the program have said this, the feeling and the hope with Leggett is that he's going to come into Pitt and not feel like he has to be the guy, that there are other guys who can be the guy, that there are other guys who can score, and he might end up as the leading scorer on some nights, as he did against Georgetown, and he might end up the 3rd or 4th leading scorer, as he probably will on a number of nights going forward this season playing at Pitt. The key is that he's he should not feel like he has to be the one who puts up all those shots and takes all those shots and tries to score all those points. Last year at Rhode Island, he had 400 field goal attempts. Shot 39% on those 400, but he had 400 field goal attempts, 250 from inside the arc, 150 3-point attempts. So, his 3-point attempts would put him, more than Nike Sabandi, below Nelly Cummings and Greg Elliott. He ended up shooting 32% from 3. But I think the belief and hope is that he's going to know that he doesn't need to take 400 shots this year. And he's going to know and believe that he can be more selective in his shooting, that he doesn't have to just try to take over games, and he can play within the offense and play with Blake Hinson and some of the other guys we're going to talk about here. And that should lead to more efficiency. A performance, I don't think you're going to get 7 of 10 for 20 points every night like he did against Georgetown, but you'll get some of those games, and largely he should be able to keep a pretty efficient stat line shooting-wise, that he doesn't need to do all of that, to take 400 shots in, how many games did Rhode Island play last year? You want to guess? 31 games. He doesn't need to take that many shots, even though he had 10 shots against Georgetown, but he'll take 10 shots in a game like he did against Georgetown when the opportunity presents itself, not because he's trying to force it. So I think it was a huge development for Pitt to get Ishmael Leggett playing at that level, and against a high major opponent, in this scrimmage. There was he made 3 3-pointers among his 7 made field goals. So again, really positive numbers, really encouraging, efficient performance from him, and I think he fits in really well. And I'm not going to sit here and say he fits the Greg Elliott mold or the Nike Sabandi role or the Jamarius Burton role, or although that probably is, even that's not a great comparison. I was going to say that Burton could be the sort of nearest comparison, that when they need someone other than the freshman to bring the ball up the court and run the point, he could do that, kind of like Burton did when Nelly Cummings was out of the game last year. But I don't even think that's a perfect comparison because, Jamarius Burton shot less than 63 point attempts last season. He made less than 20. I think Leggett will shoot more and he'll hit more and shoot a better percentage than, 18F59, which is what Burton shot last season. I think Leggett will do a better job than that. So I don't even think that's a good comparison. And that sort of leads into a thought that I've had about this team for quite some time. I've said it a bunch of times. I've probably written it, and we've probably had conversations about it on the message boards, that this year's Pitt team is going to look very different from last year's Pitt team. They've got, obviously different players. Garner, Nelly Cummings, Jamarius Burton, Greg Elliott, Nike Sabandi, not to mention John Hughley, Nate Santos. But gone are those four key contributors, those guys who played big roles on this team. Those guys are gone. And in their place, you've brought in Bub Carrington and Jalen Lowe. You've brought in Ishmael Leggett, and you've brought in Zach Austin. Numbers-wise, it's a 4-for-4 replacement. Stylistically, skill-wise, what they bring to the team, it's not a perfect 4-for-4 replacement. For one thing, those are four seniors, and you're replacing them with two freshmen, and two transfers. It's not a perfect replacement in that sense. And I don't think it's a perfect replacement in terms of style, of talent, and of what they're going to bring to the court. And I think it's going to make this team look very different. And one of the biggest things is, and I've talked about this a bunch, that I really think this will be a better rebounding team for a number of reasons. For one, I think Leggett and Austin, particularly Austin, both rebound really well from their positions. Like I said, Ishmael Leggett playing as a do-everything scorer for Rhode Island last year averaged 5.8 rebounds per game. Austin last year averaged 5.4 rebounds per game. The year before at High Point, he averaged 8 rebounds per game. He's a good rebounder, an athletic guy who can get to the basket and corral the ball. And Leggett, I think, rebounds well out of the position he's going to be playing too, that two guard. And I think they'll have better rebounding from those spots than they had last year from those spots. And that right there is an upgrade that should boost the numbers. Then you add in Federico, Jorge Diaz-Graham and Guillermo Diaz-Graham, and Blake Hinson to a certain extent. I would expect Blake to be around the same level he was last year as a rebounder. But the triplets, Federico and the Diaz-Graham twins, I think they'll all be better rebounders this year, partially due to the added strength that we've heard a lot about, but also partially just from having played a full season and understanding kind of what it takes to rebound. That strength is a big part of it, and that's going to help them, but that's not everything. Some of it is just feeling the ball, knowing how the ball is going to come off the rim, knowing how to position yourself, having a better understanding of where to put yourself to give yourself a chance to corral the rebound. And I think just experience can help with that. So you've got three guys who obviously have the size in terms of height. They've gotten stronger, and they should have a better sense of where to go to collect the rebounds. I think across the board, this will be a better rebounding team than it was a year ago because of the upgrades with Leggett and Austin, and then also just the natural improvement in development of Federico and the triplets. I think that's huge. Defensively, I think you look at sort of you look at it sort of similarly. And there's a conversation about this on the message board. There's a really good conversation, actually. You should go check it out. It's in our, I forget which thread it's in. I think our thread about the scrimmage against Georgetown. There's some conversation about whether Pitt will be better or worse defensively. And I think they should be better defensively as well. Again, I think the twins and Federico, their improvement, their development, their natural progression should make them better defensively in addition to the added strength. That's probably where the strength will come into play even more so than the rebounding because they'll be able to hang in there a little bit better. I think Blake Hinson's going to be a better defender than he was a year ago with how he has slimmed down and changed his body. And Zach Austin, if you watched our conversation with Zach Austin back in, I don't know, whenever it was over the summer, he described himself as being able to guard 1 through 5. That he could turn and guard, Jalen Lowe and then turn and guard Blake Hinson. I don't know about the twins or Federico, but he's got 6'6", 6'7" size. And so it's not out of the realm of possibility. They didn't have a guy like him last year. And it's funny, like I say that just sort of thinking of a versatile weapon who can score, who can shoot pretty well, who can, dunk, who also can defend and rebound. And earlier this fall, we talked to Blake Hinson, and I asked him, we were asking him about Zach Austin. I said, do you feel like Zach is the kind of guy you haven't really had in the past? Like you didn't really have a guy like him on the roster last year. Do you feel like he's sort of a unique guy for you? And he's like, what are you talking about? I could dunk. And I think he just thought I meant the dunking ability. But what I really mean is just the overall game. I think some people on the message boards have said he's going to be like a taller Nike Sabandi, which who wouldn't sign up for that? Who's not going to sign up for a taller Nike Sabandi with the athleticism and the explosiveness and a little bit of shooting, or a decent amount of shooting? Nike Sabandi made 40-some three-pointers last year. Zach Austin made 62. But then also the defense and what he's able to bring, defense and rebounding in addition to the offense. They didn't have a guy like him last year. I'm not sure they had a guy like Ishmael Leggett last year with the different ways he can score. It makes this team very different. And I think it'll look different, and I think it'll play different. Now, you're losing some things from last year. There's no question about it. You're losing some big things from last year. 3-point shooting is a big part of it. You add up Jamarius Burton, Nelly Cummings, Greg Elliott, and Nike Sabandi. Those guys combined to make 199 three-pointers last year. They attempted 539. They made 61.2% of Pitt's threes last season. I mean, and that's where you're losing. Those guys are all gone. You obviously bring back Blake Hinson, and you bring back the Diaz-Graham twins, who combined for about 20 or so threes among them. You also lose John Hughley, who made 5. But we won't even count that. But when you're talking about 61% of the team's threes, made three-pointers, are gone. Well, how do you replace that? Well, I think it's just like that was a group effort where, Burton made 18 threes, but Nelly Cummings made 61, and Greg Elliott made 77, and Nike Sabandi made 43. You replace it with another group effort. Blake Hinson's going to get his. I think you'll get a little bit more three-point production out of, particularly Jorge Diaz-Graham, potentially Guillermo Diaz-Graham, and then you're bringing in Austin and Leggett. Leggett last year, 88 made three-point. No, I'm sorry. In his career, he made 88 out of 264 from beyond the arc, but last year he was 48 out of 150 from three. Zach Austin last year, 62 out of 186 from three, playing at high point. So between those two, you've got, what's the math, 110 threes. So if you look at losing 199 made three-pointers and you're bringing in 110 three-pointers, and I understand how flawed that sort of direct connection is because it's not just replacing like that. But if you look at, this is what those guys did last year. The 4 guys at Pitt combined for 199. These 2 guys combined for 110. That just leaves 90 or so threes to make up if you're looking to match the 3-point production that you had a year ago, which I don't know if they're going to look to replace to match that production. I don't know if they're going to be able to match that production. I think they'll try. I think it was an effective way to play if you have good 3-point shooters. But I don't know if they're going to make up an extra 90 3-point shots unless the freshmen can make them. And now we come to Bub Carrington and Jalen Lowe, who probably are as exciting of freshman guard prospects as we've seen around here in quite some time. Now, Xavier Johnson and Trey McGowan were exciting guard prospects as freshmen. And I don't want to dismiss that. I don't want to pretend like we were less excited about them than we actually were. I think everybody was excited about what those guys did and what they were able to do as freshmen. But we also can't look at their performances as freshmen and look at, reflect back on their time as freshmen without considering how their careers went and how they ultimately ended. And here's one of the big keys, okay? Linkage, all right? When Xavier Johnson and Trey McGowan came in, they didn't have much in the way of leadership above them. I think Jared Wilson-Frame was here, and that was about it in terms of carryover leadership to set the tone for the locker room and for the culture of the program. Carrington and Lowe are coming into a situation where, yeah, they lost some big leaders from last year. Burton, Cummings. I mean, these are two guys who keyed Pitt's turnaround last season, in addition to Elliott and Sabandi. But there are holdovers from that team. There is Blake Hinson. There are the twins. There is Federico. There's Will Jeffress, who spent that time on the bench, but I mean is still around the team and part of this team. There is carryover from last season. And I think the tone that was set and the culture that was established last year by Burton, by Cummings, by Sabandi, by Elliott was also established by Hinson. And to some extent, the energy and what the twins and Federico brought to the team. And so you've got those guys carrying that over. And the environment and the culture and the locker room that Carrington and Lowe are walking into is very different from the environment, the culture, and the locker room that Xavier Johnson and Trey McGowan's walked into. And I think it's a far more positive environment and culture and locker room. I think it's a far more positive environment, culture, and locker room. I mean, Johnson and McGowan's walked into a locker room that was pretty fractured over what had happened with Kevin Stallings and that whole departure. And that's why you saw all those guys take off. That's not the case right now. Carrington and Lowe are walking into a locker room that is coming off a year where the success was generated in large part by the togetherness of the team. I think Hinson, Federico, the twins, Will Jeffress, anybody who was on the team last year who is still here, I think they learned lessons last year about what it takes to win. That it's not just about being good at basketball. That it's not just being good, able to shoot and rebound and dribble and all of those things. You've also got to have a certain togetherness as a team. I think those guys learned that last year, and I think they'll pass it on to Carrington and Lowe and Marlon Barnes this year. With ideally leadership from Austin and Leggett. There's a lot to like about this team. I mean, really, there's a lot to like about this team, and I'm excited to see them get going next Wednesday. I think you probably are too. All right, enough hoops talk here. I would have put together a basketball slideshow, but we don't have enough photos yet for a basketball slideshow. After next Wednesday, we'll have some basketball slideshow photos so we can put something together. But for now, you get to look at more pictures from the Wake Forest game. So, sorry. Anyway, we appreciate you tuning in today. Make sure you like this video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, so you don't miss any of our Pitt video content. All day, or every day of the week, we have Morning Pitt videos. We have our live streams on Wednesday night at 8:30 and the post-game show. You don't want to miss any of that, so like and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and then head over to the website, Panther-Lair.com, pittsburgh.rivals.com. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I appreciate it. Hope you have a great Thursday. Hope it's been a great week so far. We'll be back with a mailbag tomorrow. Can't wait. Looking forward to that. So, yeah, have a great Thursday. We'll talk to you tomorrow here on the Morning Pit, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.